All right. So I watched this movie, well, this clip called "Time for School Part One," and it's a PBS video about a documentary about these seven kids where they followed them throughout throughout you know their years, and to see the progression on like just their life in general, and they really focused on education and what their life is like, how they're educated, and their standard of living. And one of the things that amazed me is like the wide, what do you call it, diversity of education and the importance of it in cultures. Um, Growing up, I always had an education. I always went to school. They always pushed school, and I mean that's what you did growing up. But in countries like they covered in the video clip, they covered Afghanistan, Brazil, India, and Japan. And in three of those countries, Afghanistan, Brazil, and India, there wasn't a very high you need to go to school, emphasis on anything. It was more, yeah, it was more like it'd be great if you went to school, you would get an education, learn to read, but it's more very traditional. They need to be, women need to be at home, taking care of the house, taking care of, you know, like the chores at home, things like that. But and then the men would generally just sit around and do what they do. I don't know what they did, but and it was interesting because they had to juggle, like in Afghanistan, they had to juggle, well, schoolwork and a monster load of chores when they got home, and on top of that, the culture that they lived in, they didn't highly, they didn't look upon women as getting an education very highly. They were very traditionalist, very, they put that down, and so it's very dangerous for them to do that. And then in Brazil, they followed this boy, and it's the standard of living is just ridiculous. They basically have to fend for themselves while they're going to school. But and and then in India, they followed this girl where she learns, she loves learning, but because of stuff going on at home, she is unable to. No, she is unable to go and complete her education. She has the equivalent of second grade, and she's unable to go ahead and continue her education because she is needed at home. They need her. She can't avoid the chores at home, the duties that she was expected to fulfill because of culture, but also because of home and just the duties and the things they need to do at home. Then they followed this guy in Japan, this kid in Japan, where it's almost 100%. Everybody goes to school. Everybody goes and does this. Goes to school and completes the curriculum. And one thing that they're facing right now in Japan is they've slacked off. I don't know if that's the right terminology, but they slacked off in how focused they are in their schooling, like with the curriculum and everything, how focused they are, and it's no, I don't know. They originally did it because they people saw Japan as like, oh, you have to go to school all the time, you have to, that's just what you do. You can't go and like you have no other life. But so they relaxed the structure on the schooling, and they feel that because of that, no, the students now are suffering because of that. They don't have enough structure. They just no, they don't do it because they want to learn. They do it because they have to, and they just blow right through it, and they just haphazardly complete the work. And there's not enough focus, enough drive, and 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 it surprised me because I take school for granted. The kid in Japan takes school for granted, and well, just what I've seen, they're taking school for granted, and you compare it to the people in India, the people in Brazil, the people in Afghanistan. The people in Afghanistan, and like those are the two countries. They have nothing. They are fighting to have an education, to learn, to grow, to excel. But the people in Japan, and no, myself included, I'm not from Japan. I'm United States of America, but we take it for granted. It's part of our life. We live it, and we don't care because that's just what you do. That's life. Suck it up and get over it. But it's really interesting to see the contrast between the two, and like the hopes and the fears of the parents. I think some parents, they're like, "You need school. You need to be home. You need to take care of the kid. You need to do your chores. You need to do what's expected of you." But in other countries, it's like you need to get an education. I don't want you to do what I'm doing. I don't want you to be in the situation or that I'm in or worse. It's like the one in Brazil, this kid's mother. She's like, I don't want him to grow up and be a drug dealer. I don't want my daughter to grow up and be a prostitute. I want a better life for them, but I'm afraid because of schooling, because of the lack of attention, that they're going to turn to different means, different ways, and their life is just going to go down the drain. But it's really frustrating for me not frustrating. It's eye-opening for me to see that adolescence, that those years between elementary school and high school, and and even high school, it's very challenging for a kid. I mean, granted, I went through it. I know from my experience what they go through, but it's very eye-opening to see from somebody else's perspective and understand that by the time that people by the time they complete elementary school, like a huge amount of them have dropped out. They just don't care. But whereas in high school where I live, high school you get drop out, college you get drop out. And it's just amazing the pressure that you have in that period of time. You think, college is stressful, getting a job is stressful, getting married is stressful, doing whatever. But I think for me the most stressful time is when you're developing, when you're making those decisions, when you're still young enough to be foolish, but old enough to start understanding and start to get it. That's when the pressure. That's when the pressure is. That's when the pressure builds, and some people crack. And it was a very eye-opening experience for me to watch this movie. I felt a connection with all of them, like with all the people that they followed, with those 4 kids that they followed throughout the years, and it's opened my eyes in a whole new way as far as viewing education and the importance of education, the importance of learning, on an individual level, on a country level, on a global level. Because if this is the future, if the future consists of, for these kids, you're not going to get an education. You're going to work on the farm. You're going to work your chores. You're going to do whatever, but to get an education, as I know it, then as we typically know it, it's the world's gonna go down the drain. The world's gonna fail. Globalization will cease to exist. Development will cease to exist. Being excited to learn will cease to exist because we're too busy doing the things that others deem important and not what we ourselves deem important, because ultimately what we deem as important matters. Because if we don't do something, who will? I don't know. That's something we're going to have to watch and find out.